Lovely. Thank you very much. And good morning to everyone. And thank you for joining us here today. So, as Vic has touched on, this is going to be session one of a six-session series. So, I'm going to really just be touching on, our SASE architecture and a bit of a journey that we see our customers going through in regards to how they looking and adopting SSE and SASE platforms. The post sessions, session two, three, four, five, and six, we're going to be going into a bit more detail in regards to CASB modernization, zero trust, a very hot topic around for the last couple of years, and lots of organizations are moving down that direction with adopting that sort of capability. We're also going to do some deep dives into our data protection and how we provide network performance at scale. And obviously, the hottest topic in the session six is all about AI risk and governance. So that's something on every CISO's mind at the moment. How do we help identify and control the AI usage across the organizations? Very similar to the shadow IT problem that we've been dealing with for the last 10 to 15 years. We have that problem resurfaced yet again with AI risk as well. So a very topical conversation to be having. As Vic has mentioned, please feel free to ask any questions as we go. Drop those in the chat, and we'll also be doing a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation as well. But first of all, to kick off, we have two polling questions. So the first one is all about understanding your journey, where you are up to with that journey for SSE and SASE adoption. And the second polling question is all about what are the primary drivers for your SASE adoption as well. So those should be visible on your screen today.
Right, they are live now.
Let me know once they're done, Vickers, and I'll continue with the presentation.
Right, let's give it 30 more seconds. Folks are responding right now. So about 37, 38 people have responded and count is increasing. Great, 63, 64 answers are there. 10 more seconds, and then I'm gonna end the poll now. So we have 74, 73 folks have responded. So I'm clicking on end poll and then share the results. Great.
There we go.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, as you can see, it's quite an interesting mix in regards to the adoption of SSE. As you can see, there's quite a few that have completed or already down that thing, a quarter of organizations, and this is very much where I generally see customers' journeys on with the customers I speak to across Asia Pacific and Japan. And as you can see, about 50% are planning or evaluating in regards to how they adopt these platform plays. And that's really what I'll be talking about today. So very interesting to see that. Just delving into the second question is, what are the primary functions? As you can see, cost reduction, that's a big component. And that's one of the big things that we'll be touching on today. Obviously, when you're working with less vendors, it makes it a lot more attractive, makes it simplifies your security and network stack. So generally what we're seeing here is basically what I'm hearing from customers as well. So this very much aligns to the feedback that I receive from the various customers across the region. So very interesting results. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, let's dive in. All right, so the whole idea with SASE, and this is, I suppose, something that's been coined by Gartner for quite some time. It's really bringing together security and networking as one. And I suppose when you think about it, in most organizations, especially large organizations, you've got a separate security team and a separate network team. But these days, with the way we see the collapsing of technology stacks, it's very much starting to bleed into one cloud transformation where network and security are coming together. And these are some of the key things that we're seeing as part of Gartner's definition of SASE. Obviously, as we see each year, Gartner continues to add additional capabilities and components. And I'm pretty sure next year, with the launch of their new SASE quadrant, they're going to be mostly focused on SASE instead of SSE. But I do believe we're still going to see a continued shift and more technology stacks coming into the whole SASE architecture and framework. So very exciting times for us, and obviously it makes it very interesting and challenging, not only as for us as a vendor, but also for you as consumers of technology as well. So it's very hard to keep an eye on the transformation that's happening around us. Quite a bit going on here, but some of the key drivers that I see organizations moving towards for a SASE play is it really comes back down to a couple of things. Cost reduction is one of the biggest ones we see, and we saw that in the poll as well. Simplifying the complexity of not only the network, the infrastructure, your security controls, but also simplifying the complexity of the skill sets that your teams need to maintain as well. So an example, if you've got 10 different vendors managing various components of SASE, it makes it very simplistic and easier for the teams to continue their education and understanding when you've got a single platform play. And this is really what we've seen, the whole idea of SASE. It becomes down to a platformization, and it's really leveraging all those various elements, those technology stacks inside that platform. Another key component is obviously making it easy to adopt new security components. So having that agility that if there's a new technology stack like cloud firewall or DNS security, it makes it very, very simplistic and easily to adopt those new technology stacks. So these are some of the biggest drivers that we've seen organizations go through as they move to SASE platforms. In general, this is how we generally work with our customers on how do we go through that SASE journey and how do we make it simplistic and easy for you to adopt the whole SASE framework. And as I said, if you have a look at SASE itself, it's made up of about 23, 24 technology stacks. It makes it pretty much impossible for an organization to do the full SASE journey in a very short period of time. So I've seen a lot of customers, they go, well, let's have a look at about what's the safest and more phased approach on how we can get to our ultimate SASE goals, but make it a quite simplistic and easier model to adopt the technology. And generally what we see is customers are moving away from some of the gateway solutions, moving into a cloud-first methodology. So next-gen secure web gateway, which really covers off your legacy secure web gateway, but it also covers off your CASB and line, so your SaaS, your IaaS, your PaaS adoption. It's really helping transform organizations as that is the first step. From we have a look at how we can start taking on some of the advanced services that we see from DLP, threat behavior analysis. Obviously, DLP is vastly different from your traditional legacy on-prem ones, moving in towards the cloud. So this is where you've seen a huge influx in things like machine learning and AI, and how it's helping classify DLP data sets, how that information is moving around, who has access to that data, how they're sharing that information, and who they're sharing that information with as well. So all these become, the stepping stone for setting up, which is the next thing, which really comes back down to Zero Trust. As I mentioned before, there's a dedicated session on Zero Trust. This is one of the key capabilities that customers generally adopt from us. The reason for that is just the sprawl of the users today. So people are working remote. Obviously, COVID had a huge influence in this, but we've seen the breakdown of traditional offices and people are working remote. They're working in coffee shops. Vic has mentioned today he's on the road as well. And that's generally just how we operate. So Zero Trust has become a forefront of challenges that CISOs and CIOs are having to face because of the sprawl of their workforce today. And the final step is really where we see organizations adopting some more advanced security capabilities, things like firewalls, IPS, DNS. So as I mentioned, you think about Zero Trust. Most of your users are working remote at coffee shops, from home, etc. Traditionally, organizations used to invest very heavily in securing their data centers. So, large firewalls, large IPS and things of that sort of nature. And all the users used to come through those egress points, which are generally your large data centers. The challenge is now that all the users are working remote, they've lost some of those security controls, such as firewalls, IPS, because essentially they're connecting in via some of the Zero Trust principles. So this is the whole idea where we're seeing those sort of security controls now move back to the endpoint. So this is really the final convergence that we see of legacy architecture into the SASE journey. And as I said, it's a staged approach. It's very hard for an organization to consume and onboard all these technology stacks in a 3-6 month period. So this is generally a multi-year journey as organizations go through the SASE transformation. The next thing is, how does Netskope help solve this problem? This is really what I want to talk about, is that we've been very focused on building a single platform architecture. So having a single console, a single engine, a single client, a single network, and providing all those services on top of this. And this is one of the key things I touched on before, is that if you have a platform, you're going to start consuming more and more services from a vendor such as Netskope. Obviously, there's a lot of things that gets raised about what is the potential risk, because obviously, essentially, I'm putting all the eggs in one basket. What is the potential risk? And that's something I'm going to delve into, how we remove some of that risk when adopting a platform. But I said this has been one of our primary focuses. Every single time we've made an acquisition, we've built new technology, we wanted to make sure it was integrated into our architecture from day one. So all the new acquisitions we've made, any technology stacks, it's the same client that gets deployed. It's the same network that it's operating on. It's the same UI to manage all the infrastructure. And that's something that yet again comes back down to that simplicity and the agility that we spoke about earlier. So that's really how we've been focused on building this. As I said, Netskope was very focused and invested very, very heavily inside SASE. We wanted to become a leader in the SASE space. A big part of that journey is very recently we actually launched on the NASDAQ, so now we're a publicly listed company, and it's really helped drive our name and our brand, and more importantly, provide that confidence to our customers that are leveraging our capability. As you can see from the slide, Netskope has been marked as a leader when it comes to the SSE by Gartner for the last 4 years. We've been in the leaders quadrant. When you look at before SSE was a thing, it was all about CASB and line. Yet again, Netskope has been a leader in that play as well. So we've seen the evolution from CASB and SWG converging to be basically provide the core of SSE, and that's where Netskope has been a massive lead as part of that. Additionally, as part of when we have a look at when they launched the SASE quadrant as well. Yet again, Netskope made some acquisitions and some forward investment. As I said, we were very focused on becoming a SASE leader across the realms, and we invested quite heavily. And yet again, Gartner identified that we are a leader based off the critical capability use cases that we actually meet and provide. So something we're very proud of. Obviously, this requires a huge amount of effort, development to make sure that we continue to be as a leader. And I said there's a lot of exciting things coming up on our future vision, especially around AI. There's a lot of great things happening there as well. So the key thing I want to talk about Netskope is basically what we call our Netskope One platform. And the whole idea behind this, it's really our infrastructure and our architecture that is our secret sauce. If we have a look at other providers, some of them are using public cloud. There's some limitations with that because you don't really control it. But one of the things that Netskope is very, very focused on is how do we provide a solution that customers can leverage without degradation in performance. And that's one of the key things. Generally, when you think about doing security, especially deep security, deep DLP, deep threats, behavior analysis, you generally have a trade-off with performance. And one of the ways we had a look at this, and as I said, it's an underlying secret sauce, is what we call our new edge architecture. So we essentially invested about $250+ million in what we call our new edge architecture. And the whole idea behind this is that we wanted to control our own destiny. We built our own data centers as close to users as possible. Our ultimate goal when we built this network was to be within any user in the world in sub 20 milliseconds. And the reason for that is if we're close to the user and we're close to the applications, it means we can provide that huge security overlay without a trade-off on performance. And another key thing is of us building our own network is we wanted to control the on-ramps, we wanted to control the off-ramps, because availability was very, very important to us. If we were hosted in a public cloud architecture, it makes it very, very challenging for us to, if a customer calls up and says, Netskope, we seem to have an issue in this location. If we're leveraging GCP, AWS, or Azure, obviously we're dependent on their capability. And no customer wants to be in a situation, especially where you're processing mission critical traffic, where we're going while we're waiting on another providers for their service to return. So this is essentially what we built, is what we call our new edge architecture. We've got huge amount of locations around the world. We've got 8 data planes as an example alone just in India, so more than any other provider out there. We also invested very heavily in what we call our management plane. So inside our data planes, this is essentially where we're doing the SSL decrypt and all our security services is running. So your DLP, your Zero Trust, your next-gen secure web gateway, your cloud firewall, etc. So that's really doing the processing. So that's really where we wanted to control those data planes because that translates to our user experience. But what we've also invested quite heavily in compared to any other vendor out there is management planes. And what management planes essentially host all your policies, your metadata, your logs, things of that sort of nature. So we are currently building a localized management plane in India. This is targeted to be completed in March. And essentially what this means is that, with the new regulatory requirements coming in with DPDP, with CBI, with IBI, it means we can fully ensure that all your data sets across all our technologies, and that's something that's quite important, is that once we have this management plane architecture within the country of India, we essentially have the capability to essentially turn India into an island. You could basically bring down every single global link for India, and our solution, along with our 8 data planes and our management planes, will continue to operate. It also provides organizations a bit of flexibility. So an example, if you wanted to ring fence your SSL decrypt, so SSL decrypts only happened within India, and then all your metadata only goes to the management plane, you have that flexibility as well. But this is yet again just going to show the investment that we're making in these management planes on a global perspective. So we have 11 today. As I said, we're standing up. We've got India underway at the moment, and then post that, we're looking at France, and then post that, Japan as well. So continued investment in our infrastructure and our architecture. Similar with our data planes, there's continued investment. As I said, it's really focused on where we're seeing users coming from. That helps us identify where we want to stand up our next data plane as well. All these sort of things are very much helping us be compliant with those regulatory things, but it's also helping, how do we look at zero trust and how do we look at NIST principles to ensure that we're aligning with some of these concepts as well. A big part of what we do
just to add one small thing, this is what Geoff mentioned on the full compute and how we have structured our service delivery model. We are the industry first focusing on providing your latency SLAs, because when you transform into a SASE architecture, one major thing is you are moving out from your own data centers and using a service model which provide you security across the platform. You also need to make sure that your latencies will be intact. You will be on the faster path to use that. And that's where the Netskope is unique in providing the latency SLAs by providing those from these fully compute data centers.
Thank you, Brajesh. Indeed, very, very important. And this leads into what I was going to be touching on here, is that a big part of what we've been very focused on is our peering. So the reason why this is so important to Netskope is that you can see here, according to Hurricane Electric, we're the 12th largest peered network in the world today. We're so focused on peering, we'll even peer directly with customers. And the reason why we've been focusing on this is because if we can remove hops out of the wire, which is generally the open internet, which is unreliable, no guaranteed services, SLA, etc., it means we're removing hops out of the wire and we're getting as close to the user as possible. But also on the other side, we're getting as close to the SaaS services, the IaaS services, the PaaS services, etc. We've even got customers moving towards us and getting a better experience with Netskope, even with all the additional security processing, than what they had with an express route or a direct connect service. And the reason for that is the way we've done our peering with these various providers. So I said it's something that we've been very focused on, so much so we even have an open email address called peering@netskope.com, where any organization, any user can basically just jump on there and send us a request to do direct peering. So something that's really important. Here's an example of some of the providers out there that we are peering with. And as I said, this is the key thing that helps us with this is to really get into that low latency ultimate user performance, because that's really what it comes back down to when organizations are adopting SASE, is that there is concerns from the networking teams, there's concerns from the security teams, that there may be a degradation in user experience. So that's the reason why we've been so focused on building out that new edge architecture. And very similarly with our SASE side of things, with our SD-WAN, our borderless WAN capability, we've now taken that and integrated it with our new edge architecture as well. So whether your users are coming from the home, coming from the coffee shop, the branch office, you've got IoT, OT devices, yet again, you're getting the full SASE capabilities across all those locations. And that's really the core functionality that I was talking about, where security meets the network. And obviously the network, especially our network, is one of those underlying components. And coming back to what Prajesh spoke about, this is the reason why we've managed to provide these industry-leading SLAs. An example, we provide an SLA of how long your traffic will actually stay inside Netskope as it goes through our various engines. So we have a single pass architecture. So yet again, when it's going through DLP, it's going through your behavior analysis, it's going through the various threat engines. We provide an SLA which is measurable inside our platform using digital experience management, and it's actually going to give you and show you the overall user experience that that users are having when it comes to leveraging Netskope. Key thing I wanted to quickly circle back on is this, when you're looking at leveraging New Edge, and this is the key thing, the benefit and the agility that a SASE provider brings, is that once you've done the initial deployment, let's just say you've just done the next-gen secure web gateway component, you've already done all the hard work, you've done the plumbing, etc., etc. Once the plumbing has been done, as soon as an organization's security posture or needs have changed, it makes it very, very simplistic to adopt any of these additional capabilities. Essentially, it's just a feature flag, and obviously, depending on the solution that you're enabling, there may be some additional policy required as well. But this is one of the benefits that we've seen our organizations and our customers go through as they adopt our SASE platform and they go on the journey with us. And as I mentioned before, these are some of the technology stacks we have today. I envision we'll probably see 2 or 3 more next year as well. So it's an ever-evolving world when it comes to SASE security and SASE platforms. My money is going to be on web application firewalls, and we'll see how that goes next year. But I do believe we're going to start seeing a lot more collapsing of those public users into controlled applications, very similar to how zero trust models work as well. Another quick thing I wanted to touch on which is something that becomes very, very important. And this is, we've seen this coming from, especially from the networking side. Obviously, a big challenge that we see from the I&O side of an organization is that traditionally the network team have always had full visibility into their network because obviously they control everything, all the routers, the switches, the whole way back down to the cabling. They get to see a full picture of end to end of the users that they control. And this is where the nervousness, I suppose, came from the various networking teams, is because they are starting to lose visibility of what their users are doing and how they were gaining access to these specific services. More importantly, whenever there's a problem, everyone always blames the network team. Then the network team will blame the firewall team. Unfortunately, it's a finger pointing game. And this is where digital experience management really helped the networking side of the business regain visibility into what their users are doing. So very simplistically, the whole idea with digital experience management, it's monitoring the whole way from the user and the user's device, hop by hop, to Netskope, through Netskope. As I mentioned, we've got that SLA that measures our performance of how we process your traffic. So yet again, through Netskope, and the whole way through to the SaaS application or the website or IaaS or PaaS, whatever it may be, and then the whole way back again. So this is where it becomes a very, very powerful tool. And we've even introduced some of these, proactive elements inside our digital experience management. So as an example, you can automatically get proactive alerts to say, we're seeing users in this region, like specific country, coming from a specific telco, have a degradation in service. So it can start proactively alerting your help desk. It can start proactively alerting your networking teams to say, we're seeing events for specific applications coming from specific telcos, coming from specific regions. So it's really trying to make it a whole lot easier in regards to doing that troubleshooting. Another key thing that we've been working on is how do we take all this great information that we're receiving and make it quite simple for the user to digest as well, to stop calls coming into your help desk. So an example, it's a user's working at home, it's a wonderful day outside. they decide, you know what, I'm going to go work outside. Unfortunately, they've gone too far from their wireless device. So they have a degradation in their signal. The whole idea is that we can proactively alert the user to say, we've seen your wireless signal decrease. Please move closer to your access point. So yet again, trying to save those additional calls coming into your various help desk teams as well. So something that's very powerful. And to give two real world examples, this actually happened to a customer here, a large insurance agency here within Australia. The top one, we actually managed to identify packet loss within their core network. As you can see, some pretty significant numbers based off their core switching mesh, 13.8 and 17.8% packet loss. So very significant. Anyone knows as soon as you start getting 1-2% packet loss, things like VoIP traffic, you start seeing jitter, frame loss, things of that sort of nature. So this is where it becomes very, very important, giving you that hop by hop view on the overall experience that users are having. The one down below, there's an example of a user going to our two Melbourne pops. So Mel 1 and Mel 3. These two pops, obviously you can see from the top one, it's just taking way too many hops. So we can leverage a thing, what we call route control. And route control is monitoring from the user into Netskope and then from Netskope into the application itself. So we can start seeing that these bad traffic patterns or bad hops along the way and automatically start re-advertising routes to ensure that we have an optimum performance. So this is, yet again, one of the benefits and the power of the tool. It's really helping the operational teams, the teams that are working on this every day to really understand, where the problem may lie, whether it's in your network, whether it's in the user's network at home, maybe with the ISP, even inside Netskope, going to, the SaaS application itself, whether it's hosted on a cloud platform or wherever it may be. So the whole idea, it's really helping with that mean time to detection and mean time to remediation as well. So very, very powerful tool to help provide that visibility. How are we going for time? Perfect. All right. So the next thing I was going to quickly jump into is how we started evolving ready for AI. And as I said, there's going to be a separate session on this, but one of the key things I really wanted to touch on, which I mentioned earlier, is we've seen the same sort of challenges with AI that we saw with Shadow IT. And obviously leveraging our existing engine today, we have that capability to look at the identity, look at the device, location, the categories, the app, the instance itself, activity, behavior, threats, and obviously the data risk and sensitivity. And with that, if we have a look at traditionally how we did this on the Shadow IT aspect, as I mentioned, we're looking at the user. Then we can look at the device and the overall posture of the device. Then we can have a look at the location. So where the user coming from, is they coming from home, are they coming from the office? Is it a trusted location, untrusted location? Then we can have a look at the specific service. And yet again, the service that's being consumed, that can reference what we call our cloud control index. So we have 80,000 plus applications, SaaS applications, that are indexed. And basically, they've got a huge amount of metrics that align to its overall security rating. So as an example, you could invoke a policy to say, I don't want anyone to consume a service that may be hosted in a specific country. So you got a lot of control about how users are gaining access to those services. The next big one, and this is something that we do very uniquely compared to any other vendor out there, is the instance awareness. And what I mean by instance awareness, it's really identifying, is this a personal instance of something like ChatGPT or corporate instance of ChatGPT? And the way we do this is essentially, if you have a look at these applications, whether it's SaaS, whether it's AI, they all built with JSON. And built underneath the JSON, when you start having a look at these codes, you see all these API strings. And that's where we own the patents. So we're the only vendor that does it in this sort of context. But it gives us the ability to actually catalog to say, these are all the specific instances of an individual application that we've got. And from there, you can go in and tag and say, this is my corporate instance, this is my dev, this is my UAT, whatever it may be. And because of that, you have the ability to control the policies to say, I only want my users to go to trusted instances of that application. If you have a look right on the right-hand side, we've got some beautiful things like coaching. This is a very, very powerful tool. So instead of doing your traditional hard block and using things such as instance awareness, we can actually coach users. So when we see a user gaining access to a personal instance of OneDrive, we can automatically say to them, we've noticed you're trying to go to a personal instance of OneDrive. our corporate policy is to use the corporate one. Would you like me to redirect you? So you can start giving them a bit of a coaching thing to provide those guardrails for them to safely use SaaS-based services. On top of that, we can also go down to the activities. So we've got, we haven't even started looking at the data sets, and you have a huge amount of control about what you're doing with users' traffic. How do we control them to use, whether it's AI, whether it's SaaS-based services, how do we use them safely? So if we look at activity, we can go down to very granular things, whether it's an upload, download, renaming of a folder, deleting of a folder, stopping an EC2 instance. We can go very, very granular inside all these services today. Another big thing we can take into account is behavior analysis. So an example, if we see a user performing a risky activity like delete 400 S3 buckets inside AWS, and they have an elevated risk score, you can automatically stop them from performing that activity as well. And before, once we've done all of that, yet again, we have the ability to also have a look at the data aspect. So what is the data set that we see moving? Is it going to a trusted application? Is it going to a personal instance? And yet again, using that block, upload, and coach, we can basically invoke a policy to say, well, we're seeing you've tried to upload sensitive data. This data should only go to corporate instance. Let me redirect you there. So you've got a lot more guardrails that you can put in place. Very similar to how we've done that with Shadow IT, we now have the exact same capability to do this with AI. So instead of looking at a user perspective, we're looking at it from an agent perspective. So you've got an agent going to an unmanaged AI workload using an MCP client. What is the overall service trust? So yet again, as I touched off before, where we've got that cloud control index, where we catalog and rate all these applications based off various metrics and compliance requirements. Yet again, we have those exact same metrics when it comes to our AI usage. And our AI category is our fastest growing category that we've ever seen. So something pretty amazing. Yet again, as I mentioned on instance awareness, we have that exact same capability where we can identify, is this a corporate instance of Copilot, or is this a personal instance of Copilot? Those same behavioral scores that we saw, the same data sets, yet again, we have the ability to continue to evaluate and monitor what users are doing when it comes to AI service adoption. So a very, very powerful element of our platform. Another key thing to also have a look at when we're touching on AI, traditionally we have a look at DLP uploads. That's really what you're looking for, is exfiltration of information. But where AI becomes super important, it's not only the information going into the prompt, it's the information coming out of the prompt. And an example of that is, let's just say I go to ChatGPT and ask it to do something simple for me inside AWS to generate a script, generate a web front end with a S3 bucket in the back end for storing data. Wonderful script's going to pop out. If a developer just dropped that into their AWS console, it would, stand up a wonderful EC2 instance, whatever it may be, to provide that web service capability. But then it's also going to generate an S3 bucket. And by default, AWS is going to generate a public S3 bucket and take that new public S3 key and drop it inside the bucket. So yet again, it's helping identify any potential security risk, not only going into AI prompts, but also coming out of prompts as well. So a huge amount of work has gone into those various aspects. Getting close to the end, but one of the key things I wanted to talk about is, as I mentioned, we've got a lot of coaching and things that we can do to help put those guardrails and safety nets in place in securing how your users are consuming SaaS, IaaS, PaaS, and obviously now AI. And this has really strengthened our leading threat protection and obviously our DLP engines. If you have a look at how Gartner have rated us, we've been number one in DLP for many, many years. And the reason for that is that DLP has changed from your traditional on-premise into how organizations are consuming it inside cloud. You have a look, we've had to cover off all the channels. We're covering off web, we're covering off SaaS, email, endpoint, private apps, the list keeps going on. Obviously with DSPM, we've got all our things with on-premise data lakes and data warehousing. We have the capability to cover that off as well. But one of the things we've also extended this out to is what we call DLP as a service. And essentially what we've done is open up your configuration of DLP. And this is the thing that's quite unique about Netskope. The DLP engine for all those channels is exactly the same engine. So you have the same capability, whether it's on the endpoint, whether it's on email, whether it's on web, ZTNA, etc. And now with extending this out to DLP as a service, It now means you can take your own private applications, your chatbots, your support bots, whatever it is, and plug that into the Netskope DLP engine and leverage your existing policies. So an example of that, let's just say you've got a support chatbot. These bots can obviously be plugged into your backend systems. Let's just say it's plugged into your backend ITSM platform. If someone sends a mail form request, obviously a lot of these chatbots have got a huge amount of access to the backend systems. But if you understand how these work, you potentially have the ability to start asking these chatbots for a lot of information. So an example, if we had a support chatbot connected to Netskope's ITSM platform and you understand how it worked, you could say, show me a list of all of Netskope customers. So yet again, this is where that DLP as a service, you can start connecting these chatbots, support bots into the DLP as a service to ensure that there's no unintentional data leakage coming out of an organization as well. So a lot of powerful stuff happening in that aspect. The final thing I was going to quickly talk about today is that even though I said we're a platform where the network and the security comes together, we're obviously not your SIEM, we're not your SOAR, we're not your identity provider, we're not your XDR. So we've done a huge amount of work of integrating with the surrounding fabrics. And a big part of that is what we leverage, a thing called what we've built, which is our Netskope Cloud Exchange. Our Cloud Exchange is really built up of 4 elements. One of the key ones is log shipping, and this is literally for moving logs around, whether it's to Netskope, from Netskope, or even without Netskope. And this is one of the great things about Cloud Exchange. Even though it's included for free as part of Netskope, which is very rare for a vendor to say you have something for free, but this is a free capability. It doesn't need to operate just for Netskope. The whole idea with our Cloud Exchange, it's to automate processes. The other element I was going to touch on is our Cloud Ticket Orchestrator. So yet again, we can take signals from Netskope to say an event has happened. It can automatically generate a ticket inside your ITSM platform and assign that ticket to the corresponding team that needs to investigate and provide remediation for that incident. Yet again, as I mentioned, it can take an indicator from any of those providers, and I'll go into a bit of detail of that shortly, but the whole idea is this is really provided as a middleware capability that you can start leveraging to automate some of those workflow processes. The third module is our Cloud Threat Exchange. So this is something that I really like because it's really helping look for, should we say, indicators of compromise and things of that sort of nature. And yet again, you can take an action. So an example, let's just say we receive an indicator from, I'll talk about an XDR. If we receive an indicator from CrowdStrike as an example to say this endpoint has been compromised, that can dynamically receive that update into Cloud Exchange. Cloud Exchange can put the indicator into Netskope itself to say restrict the policy. So basically what we can do is lock down where that endpoint has access to. So it can only go to this remediation website, whatever it may be. It can also send another indicator. So if you integrated this into your switching fabric and you're using network access control, you'd have the ability to actually send an indicator to that architecture to shut down the port or lock down the port. So yet again, helping automate those workflows and reduce any blast radius of it as well. Another great thing is our risk exchange. So this is the final module that we have, and this is really focused on sharing risk, user risks that we may identify. As I mentioned before, we have a UBA score for each user inside Netskope, and that's yet again based off the actions and activities that they are performing, specifically who they're communicating, how they're communicating, what data sets they're touching, where data sets are going, how they're moving things around. So it overall provides a risk score. But this means we can also incorporate risk scores from surrounding fabric as well. So if we see a user doing something, something that may be deemed as a risk inside the email channel, that yet again can influence our risk score inside Netskope and vice versa. So a very unique platform on helping automate some of those workflow processes that you have. Here's an example of some of the vendors that we work with today. Obviously, the whole idea with our Cloud Exchange, it's open API architecture. So as long as the vendor has an API, we can do bi-directional integration. So something that we're very focused on. A lot of these are driven from our customers and our partners in regards to what they'd like to see, especially who they're integrating with as well. So as you can see, a huge amount of work has gone into helping bring not only the SASE capability together, but also integrating some of those surrounding vendors as well, which really forms the true essence of what SASE is. It's a platform play to help make it simplistic and easy to adopt various security controls, and making sure we can integrate with all that surrounding architecture as well. And that really brings me to the end of my session. So thank you very much for attending, and happy to jump into any questions that we may have.